Okay, Reno High School, Unit 6. The American polity's enduring stability and unity remain the envy of the world. Today, many other polyglot, multilingual nations are at serious risk of fragmenting into ethnic shards. Americans distrust many of their governmental institutions, but venerate, respect their Constitution and the personal freedoms that it protects, freedoms that in turn create and shape those public institutions. Do you agree or disagree with the opinion expressed here? Why? What evidence can you offer to support your position? What values and principles embodied in the U.S. Constitution entitle it to respect, and why? And how have personal freedoms guaranteed by the Bill of Rights, speech, press, assembly, petition, been used by Americans to create fundamental political and social change in the United States? You may begin.
As said in President Jimmy Carter's 1976 campaign speech, we become not a melting pot, but a beautiful mosaic. Different people, different beliefs, different dreams. We agree with Shuck and Wilson's opinion in looking back, because while diversity creates tension, our Constitution, along with its principles and values, keep us united by maintaining rule of law. And as asserted by previous Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice during the Republican National Convention, the essence of America, what really unites us, is not nationality or ethnicity or religion. It is an idea.
Our Constitution is the culmination of the failures of antiquity, the colonial experience during the Revolution, and problems faced under the Articles of Confederation. Our Constitution is one intended to endure for ages to come and to be adapted to the various crises of human affairs. Its stability and respect is maintained through the unifying idea of rule of law.
However, the expectation of equality is not protected in other nations. After the recent New Delhi rape, Indian citizens have started to face up to its legal problems, in which Brenda Grover, an Indian human rights lawyer, stated, "We do not have a culture abiding by rule of law." The values and principles of rule of law are created by checks and balances, judicial review, federalism, and skepticism of power.
Checks and balances are exemplified in Article 1, Section 7, Clause 3, giving the power of an executive veto. Article 1, Section 8, giving Congress the power of the purse, and Article 3, interfering the Supreme Court the power of judicial review, to ensure the constitutionality of state government, legislative, and executive actions. United States v. Nixon proved that even the president is not above the rule of law.
Next, our unique system of federalism protects rule of law. Federalist 51 explains the idea of a double security, where the national government prevents tyranny of the states and the state governments prevent tyranny of the national government. However, above all, the most important check on government power is the people.
President Obama, in his 2013 inaugural address, stated, "We have never relinquished our skepticism of central authority, nor have we succumbed to the fiction that all society's ills can be cured through government alone." Reflecting classical republicanism ideas, active, participating citizens can enact change, such as the women's suffrage and civil rights movement.
These movements were only possible through the freedoms guaranteed by the Bill of Rights. Nations that do not have similar First Amendment rights cannot make changes the way Susan B. Anthony or Martin Luther King Jr. did. The image of the student protester in front of the tank during the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests demonstrates the prevention of political opposition against a tyrannical government.
In France, the burqa ban forbids the covering of one's face in public, regardless of religious reasons. The First Amendment protects rights like these and allows citizens to peacefully assemble and protest policies. According to Time magazine, the lack of freedoms can be seen in China, where Chinese celebrities and journalists are putting pressure on the new president, Xi Jinping, to liberalize China's press laws.
In addition to our First Amendment rights, the Bill of Rights protects our rights to due process, jury of our peers, and the right against self-incrimination in the 4th through 8th Amendments. Courts are vital to the protections of rights because they are able to interpret the Constitution and make rulings that enact social and political change and ensure justice. Cases such as Loving v. Virginia and Batson v. Kentucky are 2 examples of social change.
As a nation, we have made discriminatory policies, such as internment camps and slavery. However, our Constitution has endured not because it is perfect, but because it so perfectly allows for flexibility in a changing world while still guaranteeing fundamental rights. President Obama's second inaugural address echoed this idea when he claimed, "We the people still believe that our obligations as Americans are not just to ourselves, but to all posterity." Thank you.
Okay, what is our modern civil rights movement?
One of the most current civil rights movement is the fact that women are now able to join the military and being able to go and perform the same duties that men do.
Another one can be seen through the ideas of Thomas Hobbes, in which he stated that our Constitution should have the pursuit of happiness entitled to it, and that pursuit of happiness is now going with education and universal health care for everyone.
Another issue is the definition of all persons in the 14th Amendment, which guarantees life, liberty, and property. And a question is, should that right to life be extended to unborn children? Do they have that right to life, and at what point in a pregnancy do they have that right?
Another civil rights movement that we can see is the gay rights movement, in which we're trying to gain equality for homosexuals before the law and in all aspects of the law.
And this can be seen because recently the Boy Scouts court ruling is being challenged, and that is providing that for gay rights, and that even people who are homosexual still have equality under the law.
To what extent should we promote ethnic representation in government, and should we do things to ensure that more minorities or there's more racial and ethnic diversity in Congress and our state legislatures?
Well, the case, the Regents of University of California versus Bakke actually upheld the idea of affirmative action in colleges, and this could be extended to our government, where we make sure that ethnic representation is in government and not just in school diversity.
This case also stated that the need for a diversity in a community is needed, because when those students do get their diplomas, most of them tend to go back to their communities and serve, where they can become doctors in communities that may not have that many Latino or Black doctors.
Conversely, Gretz v. Bollinger stated that in the case there were a point system that advocated the more diversity you had, the better chance you had of getting into the college. And this is a way that having the diversity and pushing the idea of diversity was detrimental for people who weren't of minority groups.
However, the opportunity to represent people in your government, no matter what ethnicity you are, should still be available, and by overriding certain cases like Citizens United versus FEC and equalizing the playing field so that all people, no matter what your economic class is an important milestone I think we have to reach.
You talked about the Bill of Rights, and if the Bill of Rights was such an important factor for the Anti-Federalists, then why were they rarely challenged until the incorporation of the 14th Amendment?
Originally, the states had their own Bill of Rights. In fact, Nevada still has their own Bill of Rights, and all of the states do. And through this, they didn't feel that they needed to incorporate the Bill of Rights because of the fact that the states took that into their own hands.
Further, the courts were dominated by Federalists up until this point, so they did not hear cases on Bill of Rights. And even after the passing of the 14th Amendment, which outlined incorporation, it wasn't used until 1925 with Gitlow versus New York.
There's also, you have selective incorporation, in which certain amendments have not been incorporated to the states, such as the Third Amendment, right to protect you from quartering of troops in your home, which isn't needed because we've never had that issue arise in our country since the revolutionary times.
Okay. Well, the Second Amendment is getting a lot of play these days. And the National Rifle Association Executive Vice President Wayne LaPierre has made the statement that Americans' right to bear arms is a God-given right. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Personally, I would agree because of my religious beliefs. However, I feel that the right to bear arms, a more important argument is that not only the right to self-defense outlined in court cases such as DC v. Heller, but the right to oppose government outlined in the Declaration of Independence, which says you can abolish or alter government that no longer protects your rights.
However, I disagree with his statement because I believe that the most fundamental right is life, and when your life is in risk, when 20 little elementary school children are violently killed because our gun laws are not strict enough, I believe that there's a problem with that. And if it comes to life or your gun laws, I choose life.
However, you see today that the the gun rights are certainly, they're not strict enough. However, more deaths are actually caused by things such as prescription drugs. More people die from prescription drugs every year than actual homicide accidents or homicide uses. So we can see that the use of the Second Amendment is not the use of firearms is not as prevalent as we compare them to other things, and like automobile incidents are also a lot more common than gun uses in violent crime.
But contradicting my colleague, many homicides are prevented because another citizen has a firearm that protects him.
Okay, but his comment is about God-given rights versus something based in the Constitution. I mean, do you see him, when he refers to God in that case, do you see that being inappropriate and getting apart from constitutional analysis?
Well, regardless of the idea of whether or not it is a God-given right, our Constitution does protect it. In fact, NBC was having an argument about it the other day, and they said that our Constitution actually does protect the right of us having guns. Because of the fact that our Constitution is separate from the religious beliefs and from having this basis on God, it is protected in our Constitution, and that's what we have to focus on because the Constitution is what enforces laws throughout the United States.
Okay, now, I hate to take all this time, but I have one more follow-up question on that. So the Constitution talks about, the Second Amendment talks about arms and militia, and, you know, when the amendment was written, way back when the First Amendments, you know, what were arms were probably what they had in mind back then. Is it right under the Constitution to interpret the word, in this case, let's just use that part of the language, to interpret the term arms, to expand that to encompass military-style weapons, and anything else beyond whatever they had as arms way back at the beginning of our country? Or should we be limiting it to what they were shooting pea shooters back in the times?
Well, there should clearly be limits. You shouldn't be giving military-grade weapons to ordinary citizens. There are regulations to the right to bear arms. However, completely banning our right to bear arms is directly in violation of the Constitution.
Our society has shifted significantly from when the Constitution was written over 200 years ago to how it is right now. And I think that the definition of it should change with the time, but I don't think that it extends to very, very violent weapons that are used in the military that can take down many people in just a matter of a few minutes.
However, going back to your question with how we should interpret the amendment because of the fact that it has been so much time, you can see this with cases such as the Fourth Amendment, which is the right to privacy, and how it would apply now. Obviously, George Washington didn't have a Twitter, nor did Abraham Lincoln. But this applies to the fact that we make it relevant to what we have so that it can uphold the most rights and it can expand on the most rights while limiting the government. And so by interpreting these amendments, that's what it does.
However, today I can agree that we need more restriction on guns, but this restriction does not need to extend to the point where guns are nearly impossible to achieve for the law-abiding citizen, because it is guaranteed in the Second Amendment as a right. Now, in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, the government guarantees that it will protect the states from domestic violence. And one way to do that is to have more restrictions on things such as closing the gun show loophole with more background checks on private sales.
To what extent does a president's moral behavior and actions contribute to the distrust of government that we generally see today?
One example of this could be in Obama's refusal to enforce the Defense of Marriage Act. And this raises a question of if the president has the right to participate in civil disobedience, which I believe he does not. His role under the Constitution is to uphold the laws passed by Congress.
Another good example we see in the case of U.S. v. Nixon, after Nixon committed his crimes and was impeached for it, but he resigned before he was removed from office. We can see that distrust of government comes because we can see the president committing acts of crime which we ourselves would not do.
Furthermore, this can go back much more historically with President Abraham Lincoln, in which he suspended the right to habeas corpus, and he went and created his own militia, or his own standing army, which is against his powers under the Constitution. With this created distrust with the South after they came back, and after they were joined back with the Union.
We'll go ahead and stop there.
Okay.
Okay, all right,
Sorry.
Mr. LaRue, would you like to?
Sure.
Oh.
Didn't mean to monopolize the question.
No worries, I was
Um,
actually, I enjoyed the discussion, so.
Well, now one thing that when you did your testimony, you went right down the row, and I don't know that was a good thing. It seems like everyone else kind of hops around, and I think I like that more as a judge, but that's purely stylistic. That's no big deal. When I was asking the one question about God-given right, I wasn't trying to ask that as a trick question. But again, just as an example of being responsive, there's obviously a lot you can say about the Second Amendment. It's a very hot topic, and giving your view on gun control. I mean, it's a vehicle to do that. But if the question's a little more narrow, maybe you don't need to go there. So be careful about all just chiming in and giving your standard Second Amendment gun control answer, if it may not be entirely responsive. And on the other question I asked also, Isabel, that was a great answer. When you to compare it to the Fourth Amendment, and obviously, we didn't have all kinds of things back then that we have now. I thought that was a very good answer to a good response to that question. Otherwise, you guys all chimed in again. I thought it was very balanced. You reacted very confidently in your responses, and you made good eye contact, so nicely done.
Okay, one thing. Women were allowed in combat roles now.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, don't say they joined, because they've been able to
I
join
know.
for many years.
sorry.
Since the beginning of the military.
I know. I'm sorry. It was just the wording thing.
Yeah, but I mean, it could, somebody could pick up on that. That's the
Okay.
only thing. Otherwise, always like the way this group operates, because you guys seem to have the best flow. I mean, everybody knows what everybody else is doing, and they always, one builds up on the, builds on the other, builds on the other, builds on the other. You always come up with different examples, I think. I don't think you repeat yourselves, even though, there's a good chance to do that. I think everybody adds something. One person says something, the next person, when they speak, adds something to that, and that's what you need to do as a unit. And I think that you did that very well, and you always have done that very well. So it's always good to have a discussion with this group, this unit.
I agree with that, and I want to say that and I mean this not superficially, but on a depth and personality, you guys are very diverse in your views, your outlooks, your personalities. You guys are 5 very different people, but that doesn't detract at all. In fact, I think it enhances your guys's your credibility on questions like this. That when because obviously differences, regardless of what they are, can cause people, to kill. If you want to go biblical, Cain and Abel is the difference between fruit and sheep. So that's really the difference there. But with regard to kind of the specific part of this, you get a diversity of questions, because Unit 6 is really the wrap-up unit. This is where you recap everything else that came before it. So you guys really do have to know a lot about everything that's come before you. And the Second Amendment question is not one that really fits in any particular unit, but you guys, I thought you fielded pretty well, in the sense that you generally understood the question. If I can piggyback on what Eric said about the concept of the God-given right, you have to remember that none of the actual rights in the the actual rights in the Constitution themselves are not God-given. What they are man-made mechanisms designed to protect what is natural or God-given, however you want to say it. And so the question is that when you talk about your natural rights, you've got three: life, liberty, property. And Tench Coates, I think nobody knows what I'm talking about, so it's okay. There was a philosopher around the time of the Revolution who spoke about a natural right to self-defense. Okay. The question is that there is obviously a natural right to self-defense, because if somebody comes at me, then I believe that God or nature will back me up if I fight back. The question is, did God give you the right to a particular type of projectile technology that uses gunpowder? Is that an enduring natural right? Because when we talk about arms at the time of the founding, there's a difference between arms and ordinances. Arms included knives, swords.
There's an arm for you.
That's an arm. Clark's
Let's
back.
get a knife.
Mr. Clark's back. All right, so,
Second Amendment.
but an ordinance is a thing like a cannon. Now, what is an AK-47? Is it more like a musket or a cannon?
Definitely not a cannon.
Okay, but I can hold it, I can carry it with me.
You can carry a bazooka with you.
Ah, okay. The lines have blurred, so that's part of that. And let me ask you this question. What does the ownership of guns today and assertion of that right have to do with distrust of government? Annie really hammered on that idea of altering and abolishing. So, even though we have all these guns, we haven't broken into those ethnic shards. We haven't broken up. Liked your answers to everything else. Moral actions of the president. U.S. v. Nixon was kind of along the lines of what I was looking for. Scholars, in particular, link the decline of American trust in government, to Watergate. And because the idea of the president, at least from Roosevelt through Truman and Eisenhower, because of the TV era and propaganda that came with it, was that, the president is, this is our nice, shining, smiling, shiny president. He's our Leave It to Beaver commander-in-chief. And then Richard Nixon comes along and breaks in unnecessarily, because he would have won that election landslide anyway, unnecessarily breaks into the Watergate. And since then, Carter, Reagan with Iran-Contra, Bill Clinton with God knows what else, George W. Bush with all sorts of things with Blackwater, and Barack Obama with Fast and Furious and all those other things, is that the distrust of government, that bond of trust with the President of the United States, was severed, partially because we gave up the fantasy. Because presidents have been doing this for
Ever.
Can't you say that's a good thing though?
Didn't you say it like it
could
kind of
be.
enacts the idea of
Upholds
healthy
rule of law.
skepticism?
It could be, absolutely. That's healthy skepticism, it can also contribute to cynicism as well. That unhealthy skepticism, that's not constructive.
Or polarization.
Polarization. Exactly, you've seen the man behind the curtain, you've seen the Wizard of Oz, and it's kind of short.
And Brad.
So, this is very good though, so pat yourselves on the back. Do it on Saturday.